Yeah.
Yes, okay.
One second, Rabbi. We're supposed to find it. Hi, Rabbi. Shalom Aleichem. Baruch Hashem. Shalom Aleichem. I know, but I didn't want to call you if you were teaching in Kollel. He's still in critical care. Baruch Hashem. Okay. Oh my, call to bye.
So this week we're going to look at Yitzchak and Rivka's relationship. And we know that after Abraham, Yitzchak is very different. Basically, the structure of the book of Genesis is that Abraham gets two parshas, Lech Lecha and Vayera, and now Yitzchak is going to get two parshas, Toldot and Vayetze, and
it's 3. He gets mentioned in 3.
No, it's not mentioned. Everybody's mentioned in many places. It's where it tells its story. So it's Toldot and Vayetze, and Chayei Sarah and Vayetze and Toldot, and Yaakov gets two, Vayetze and Vayeshev, and then Yosef either gets 2 or 4. It depends on how you look at it. So he's the star of Miketz, Vayeshev and Miketz. So what did I say wrong about Yaakov? Yaakov is Vayetze and Vayishlach. I forgot. Vayetze and Vayishlach. And then Yosef is Vayeshev and Miketz. And then depending on how you look at it, Vayigash and Vayechi are either everybody together or it's still Yosef. It could be that it's a rounding up of everything, and then Yosef and Yaakov are together. So these two parshas, Toldot and Chayei Sarah, which we already read, so we're focusing on Yitzchak's service. And it's completely different than Avram. He's completely the other side. If Avram was loving kindness, which is from above to below, it's bringing godliness down into the earth. That was Avram's whole task in this world, to make people aware of godliness. That Hashem is not only in the heavens. He even has a pasuk. He says, when I went out from Haran, or from Ul Kasdim, God was only the God of the heavens. Obviously he's referring to Babylonian mythology, or the whole ancient Mesopotamian mythology.
Created and then he left.
Was more like that there are 2 gods. There's a God above and a God below. There's a God of the heavens and the God of the nether world, as they called it. That's underneath. Because the Babylonian picture of reality of the cosmos was that the earth is some kind of flat thing, and there's above it is the heavens, and underneath it is the nether world. And the sun at night goes underneath. As it gets into a whole topic that it's not myself. So the sages, when they had to confront Babylonian mythology, they made one small correction to it, which again was not a correction because they understood that this was temporary, a temporary understanding of the cosmos. And they said the sun doesn't go underneath the earth at night. Why did they do that? Because they wanted there to be only one God, not that there's a God of above and a God below. So that correction, that emendation, they knew it didn't fit the facts, but they knew that the whole story of the Babylonian mythology didn't fit the facts because they couldn't explain the lunar phases with it.
They couldn't reconcile anything.
Not anything, but the basic stuff that we see, like for instance phases of the moon and eclipses, they couldn't give a good explanation for it. So they ended up leaving it to mythology. Marduk does this, and Marduk does that. Their god does this and does that. There was no good explanation. Once the Hellenistic system came around, where the earth is a sphere, And this began to penetrate into the world around the 4th or 5th centuries BCE. So they adopted that system because it was much better, and it didn't create a duality between what's above the earth and what's below the earth, as if there's two gods or something like that. So Avram really worked hard to make Hashem the God of everything, to make Hashem the God both above and of the earth and below. Yitzchak, he already is working at a different level. He says, well, since God has already been made God below, my father did that, now we have to uplift the below, meaning that there shouldn't be anything that remains as if it's some kind of hidden, concealed reality, and the physical reality that we see around us has to also be imbued and revealed to have godliness in it. So Yitzchak's toil is very different. We don't see him heralding the one God. We don't see him doing these things. He does simple things. He's a farmer, which the patriarchs usually weren't.
And he digs wells.
So he works with everything that's below. And digging a well is very symbolic, because digging a well is looking for water underneath. We knew that there was water above, because that we see every time it rains. But the idea that there's water underneath has a different symbolism. To say it another way, water from within the ground is more mysterious than water from above the ground.
Right.
Why? If only for the fact that we walk above the ground. So it's very, and you can't see, you can sort of see the clouds forming, and you can guess that it's going to rain. But when it comes to finding a well, that's a lot more difficult. So they made it easy on themselves. They went to near a bank of a river, and that's where they tried to dig. And they had all kinds of signs, but in the end, it's a much more mysterious proposition to get water out of the ground than it is to get water from above. So Yitzchak, he represents finding godliness where it's hidden, where it's concealed here below. Abraham was more about revealing that God affects everything, but it was a revealed world. It wasn't about entering the darkness of reality. Avram was all about light.
So how is Yitzchak's job different to Yaakov's job? It sounds like the same. So revealing holiness.
Yaakov deals with people already. It's something entirely different.
But his job was also to reveal the holiness.
Yeah, but he's working with soul. Right? He's in a different realm altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Avram and Yitzchak, their main focus wasn't on the people themselves. It was on the godliness. And Yaakov already brings it down to the godliness within people.
But surely godliness itself wouldn't have changed from before even Avram. It's the perception of people of godliness, right? So it's still got to do with people.
Okay, but the question is, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on, for instance, in Yaakov's life, the main issue, the main problem is family relations,
right,
all the time, from beginning to end. And when you're dealing with people, it's a different question about finding godliness in them than it is about finding godliness in what people do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
People have to work. People have to eat. They have to... all these things, finding godliness in that is very difficult. So Avram wasn't into that. Avram didn't teach people how to find godliness in their day-to-day life. Avram was about...
inspiring people.
Right. And that's why you also see that his life is full of very difficult tests. Because when a person withstands a test or is able to surpass it or to pass it, then it's inspiring. There's something special. It's a unique situation. But Yitzchak is much more down to earth. He's much more in the humdrum of day-to-day life, where it's really mysterious that you would say that there's some kind of divine something hidden here. And it just seems that you're just making a living. It doesn't look like there's something so spiritual about it.
And yet, I think last year we learned Avram's work didn't last, and
right,
Yitzchak's did.
Right.
For that
That's
exact
why-
reason.
Well, the way to say it is that when Avram tried to make inroads into reality, he failed. He didn't fail at the moment. He was okay at the moment, but
But he had to be
eventually
there.
The Philistines covered
his wells.
The wells, meaning his attempts to go into reality were short-lived. And Yitzchak was the one who made these wells permanent. He was able to uncover them and to dig new ones and to find new ways of revealing divinity within the day-to-day life.
So his job really, in other words, would be unification.
Who?
Yitzchak.
No, Yitzchak is not unification. That's Yaakov.
That's Yaakov again.
So they're all unifying something, but Yitzchak is not yet able to incorporate Avraham's point of
because
view.
he doesn't have, right.
Now, the Chiddush in this mimer that we're going to learn is that he makes it such that this was a tag team event. Yitzchak had to have Rivka. He couldn't do it alone. She added something very important into the mix.
Kindness.
That he couldn't have gotten by himself. You can sort of guess it just from their story. Yitzchak comes from a luminary, from Avram. He's a giant of faith, the greatest man of faith ever. So he's always living in a very revealed, like a household where godliness is always very, very present.
Familiar.
Okay. But Rivka comes from one of the worst households in the world. Everybody there is wicked. And she's able to illuminate her own life. So she represents the ability, which is exactly what Yitzchak is looking for. That's where they meet. That's where they connect. The Yitzchak is looking for a woman who's able to reveal divinity even in the darkest places. Because that's what she did with herself. She was able to keep herself holy and pure in the worst of environments. Okay, so they're going to work together, and this is what the mimer is about. So he starts out with something that's l'chora, it's not connected. It's a pasuk from Song of Songs. Mayim rabim lo yochlu lechabot et ha'ava. I'll just read the full pasuk, and then I won't really use the Art Scroll translation because they decided to add their own words into the into the original verse. I don't know why. מים רבים לא יוכלו לכבות את האהבה ונהרות לא ישטפוה אם ייתן איש את כל הון ביתו באהבה בוז יבוזו לו. So their translation is much waters cannot extinguish the fire of this love, nor rivers of royal can extinguish the fire, its fire. Okay? They added words here that have no business being in the translation. I won't say what they are.
So what is the actual translation?
I just said the actual.
No. What is the real translation? That is the real translation.
Where any man, now they're giving the way that most people understand this, and this is how we'll translate it first, and then the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it in a different way, which is going to shed a lot of light on this verse. Were any man, meaning if any man were to offer all the treasures of his home to entice you away from your love, to entice you away is not in the verse, but for the love, they would scorn him to extreme. In any case, what's it talking about? So what really is difficult about this is that it's talking. They understood for some reason that this verse is talking about idolatrous love, but this verse is not talking about idolatrous love. I don't know how you can even get there, but it's talking about love for God. It says, "Mayim rabim lo yochlu lechabot ha'ava." Many waters cannot extinguish the fire of love, the love of God. And then it says, if a man were to give all, this is difficult. Because if you already said that nothing can extinguish it, then what do you add by saying if somebody were to give all the treasures, then he would be scorned? Meaning, all the treasures for what? To persuade you not to love? But you already said that nothing can extinguish it, so what are you adding? So you might add, treasures. Maybe that's different than extinguishing. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's voluntary. It's very hard to understand the second part of the verse as it relates to the first part, because it seems that he said already everything in the first part. So what's he adding by saying that he would be scorned if somebody would offer you money, all the treasures, to stop loving God? You would scorn him. You might add something. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain the word "were" im in a different way, and that'll it'll explain what this verse really means.
Im could be when as well, right?
Right. When you're given all the treasures, then we'll see what that means. So what is this talking about? It says in the Zohar, it says, this is the supernal river, from where many tributaries go off in every direction. Okay? So that's the river of love that we're talking about. There's a song like that, no? River of love? Something like that.
The rivers of Babylon, that's the only river of love I remember.
There's also a famous southern song in America. This was like
You lost me at hello. Southern in America.
Take Me to the River.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You must have heard that.
Yeah, I
it's
remember
very
that song.
famous. I think it started as a gospel.
Yeah, it sounds like it
But
too.
it became like, and really...
Take me to the river, throw me in the water, or something like this, right?
And I think it's something like about being
Baptizing.
baptized or something. But really when you hear it, so it's very hard not to remember this verse. Because a river always, this is what the Zohar is saying, a river always indicates love. Why? Because water is love.
Right.
Water is connected to love. So in Hebrew, the word mayim you don't necessarily associate it with love, but you can sort of understand what's happening. Water is very romantic. There's something about water that it makes. We always describe love as flowing. Nobody ever describes judgment as flowing like water, right? Judgment is like fire.
Right.
Okay. So Yitzchak is more like fire. So it's very interesting to start a mimer about Yitzchak, who's all about judgment, about the left side. I started with a verse about water. So obviously he must mean something much deeper. So this is what we're going to get in. והנה הנהרות הנמשכים מן המעיינות, שהמעיינות נובעים מן התהום, הם נמשכים הנהרות, כמו שכתב ושולח מעיינים בנחלים, והמעיינות נובעים מתחת לארץ. המנהרות נמשכים בגילוי על פני כל הארץ, וכך התורה נמשלה למים, כמו שכתוב יצא מלך למים, יש בה בחינת מעיין, וכמאמר חכים ולא חוכמה ידיעה, שלא מושג כלל, כמשל המעיין שנובע מתחת לארץ ולא נקרא ונגלה כל כך. ויש בה בחינת נהרות, כמו שכתוב ונהר יוצא מעדן להשקות את הגן. So we have to understand there's two different things. There's rivers, but there's also what we call underground water. And the underground water that comes out in a wellspring is something completely different than the river. Because the river is revealed. It goes on the surface of the earth. But the underground rivers,
it's a source of water.
The sources of the water, they're very mysterious. Yeah. There's something else entirely.
They could be hundreds of years old, thousands of years old.
Thousands of years old. And there's much more of them than there is water above ground. Certainly fresh water. It might be a little sulfuric, but usually they're very clean. We don't know how much there is. We have no clue. I don't think that there's even an estimate, because it's very complex to figure out how much water is actually underground. But all that's a different question. The real question is, what do they symbolize? So the water that's above ground, water in general represents wisdom. Also, it's also the right side of the Sfirot. So above loving kindness, we have wisdom. So water is about wisdom. The water is wisdom, this concept. And then you have two different types of wisdom. There's the wisdom that's on the surface. Everybody sees, everybody can learn. It's sort of like what you would call what you know that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a certain amount of knowledge that I don't have, but I know where it's flowing. I know where it's, I can go there. I can go ask somebody to teach it to me. But when it comes to what's underground,
you don't even know. You don't even know that you don't know.
I have no knowledge of it. And here we're talking about something much bigger. So which one is more like godliness? So he says, the revealed wisdom, that's the Torah the way that we understand it. But the concealed wisdom, And here we have to switch the way we're looking at it, because we're looking at it that the river underground is underneath the revealed river. But when you look at it, when you're talking about godliness, you have to flip your point of view. You have to look as if it's, you're just flipping it over. So the concealed wisdom is higher than the revealed wisdom. So the revealed wisdom is what a person thinks with. That's one of his powers of the intellect. But the concealed wisdom, that's in the crown, and it's hidden. We said in general that the crown is super conscious. It's above our consciousness. We're not aware of it.
So why do we need to flip it? Why can't we still leave it in this? It's just a construct, right? How we envisage. Why is it? Why does the high wisdom have to be higher? It's just
that's how we.
Is that a human thing? Right?
It's a human thing to think about God as being higher.
Okay.
But if you look at
makes
godliness,
the difference.
What?
I didn't see the difference. It can be higher and still below.
Most people will get confused when you say that. You're right, but most people will get confused. If you say that the underground currents, the ones under the ground, they represent godliness. So, for instance, you might get into the problem that the Babylonians had. The Babylonians.
Oh, it must be a different god.
Yeah, it must be a different god because one's above is one thing.
It's a bit limited, but okay, I get it.
So people, obviously, today people would stay with a question. They would go like, I don't get it. So it's the same one. They wouldn't say it's somebody else, but they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't understand what's going on. In the time of the Babylonians, because the thought was much less developed, so a simple person, when he heard this, he would say, there's two gods. That's how he would understand it. Okay. Today, I don't think some people would get to that, but they would be left with a feeling that maybe what's below is somehow connected to Klippa. Maybe it's something, maybe the water is coming from there are not as pure. It's not true. The water is coming from below. The water is coming from above. They're always fresh water. So you have to understand that they're somehow connected. How are they connected? Because the world is like a sphere. So you have to look at us being in the middle, and sometimes what's greater than us is below us, and sometimes it's above us. But it's all the same thing. It's all the same idea. That's in terms of a sphere. If we were talking about it in terms of a ray, it would be a different thing. Then you would have a real question. That's why the Rizal says that if you want to talk about a ray of light descending, then you can't say that it connects on the bottom, because if it would connect on the bottom, there would again be no difference between above and below. And a ray wants to say that there is above and below. Mm-hmm. And that already has different meanings. So usually the way we explain it is that nature is round. In nature, you can't find this above and below. Everything in the end is circular. In man, there is above and below. In the human being, there is progress. It's not that, again, like people think that if you lived in the caves, you were much healthier than you are today. It's not true. Because you had very short life expectancy for a variety of reasons.
There was a whole genre of books written about these salts that are in caves that they're supposed to promote long life and.
In any case,
In
any case, you see that in a human being's development, you see in an animal's development that it's circular, meaning there's nothing much to be gained after they're 2 months old. All the animals, they pretty much stay the same. But a human being is linear. He's constantly developing. If he's not developing, he's not a human being. By definition, a human being is a straight line. And it has a beginning and it has an end. Oh. And it's supposed to develop. Okay, that's a side point. So here he goes into this thing that really the fountainhead or the wellspring is a source of a type of wisdom. And that wisdom, where did we see it first? We saw when there was a river coming out of Eden to water the garden. That, what is it talking about? So we understand that that's talking about the intellect. The intellect has a fountain, it has a wellspring. That's where the waters come from, a higher place, the higher place or a lower place, however you want to call it. That's called the tehom. That's called the hidden, concealed wisdom in the crown.
Is that chokhmah?
It's called the hidden, concealed wisdom. Okay. It's not regular chokhmah. It's not just wisdom. And then, like in a river, like in a fountainhead, like in a wellspring, drop by drop it comes out, and as it accumulates, you get a flow.
So these drops, what are they?
So the drops are the drops of wisdom, points of wisdom, revealed wisdom that a person has. He has some insight suddenly. When it accumulates, it becomes understanding.
Yeah.
And as it flows further and further,
it gets.
And even when it reaches the ocean, that's the knowledge. That's the dot.
So the internalization happens when it hits the main body of water.
Okay.
When it becomes part of the, when the water becomes part of the whole. Right.
So it's understood that everything that's being discussed, again, at an allegorical level, everything that's being discussed about the Garden of Eden is really discussing the intellect.
The flow of the Sefirot as well.
Okay. But you can also explain it that it's talking about revealing godliness, because you have to understand that in Torah, godliness is intellect. It's not that it's only intellect, but if you want it to be revealed, if you want to reveal godliness, you have to have knowledge. You can't say that you know that you have call it an awareness of God without studying Torah. It doesn't work. You have to have knowledge. You have to use your brain. It's called En Am Haaretz Chassid. A person who doesn't learn, he can't be a chassid. Chassid means that he has an intimate connection to God. That you can't have. It doesn't work. You have to. Doesn't mean that a person doesn't have an intellect or doesn't have a sharp intellect can't have knowledge of God. He has knowledge of God at his level. Like every river is something else. Every wide rivers like the Mississippi, like the Amazon, and there's little rivers like Eretz Yisrael's rivers, which are like little streams.
So this is really what Rambam means when he says, he doesn't mean
not just Rambam, but everybody. There's an understanding that if you're not learning every day, you're not developing your relationship with God. Again, there's many other things to do. There's mitzvahs, as we'll see in a moment, but there's still this basic notion that the intellect is the path to connecting to God. So here we have two types of rivers. We said there's the river above ground and the river below ground. The river above ground, that's what the verse says. The revealed river, the revealed levels are not enough in order to quench the thirst of the Jewish people. It's not enough. What are the revealed? Revealed wisdom. Revealed wisdom is not enough. You need something more.
This goes to that. Sorry to interrupt. This goes to that concept where Jews, bichlal, are always drawn to foreign cults and all the things when they don't have Torah learning, when they have Hashem in their lives, because they're always searching, they're always thirsty, and they just don't know what they're thirsty for.
Right.
So.
And they're always off the beaten path.
Right. The wilder the better. The wilder the better.
Some of the very few are actually satisfied with studying physics in the university. Some are, but very few.
The wilder the better.
And then you find them in all kinds of strange places. So anybody who actually has this, sometimes looking for concealed wisdom, is some kind of it's a paranoia effect. It's more like believing that somehow something else is running the world. But sometimes it is that something else is running the world. Right. And you're looking for godliness, and you say, the regular wisdom that I met in school, that doesn't help me. I want to hear something deeper. And a lot of Jews don't know even that Torah has an inner dimension. And suddenly when so it's true that, Rav Steinsaltz used to laugh at this. He says, if I tell you now about the Sefirot and tell you about the Partzufim, what will you get? You'll get from it this feeling of having been in a very spiritual place, da, 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 da. But after you go home, what's left from that?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So really, I'd rather explain to you all these things in a very mundane fashion, so that it would change something in your life and not just be some kind of knowledge. Because it's very difficult for most people to take, especially esoteric knowledge, and turn it into something that they use in their everyday life. It's very, very difficult. If you read, I can't remember his name, Herbert. I think his last name was Herbert. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's a guy who wrote 9.5 Mystics. He was a Jew from New Jersey, and he became very interested in studying Jewish mysticism. And he traveled to Eretz Yisrael, and he went in America also to meet the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and there's very, very interesting accounts of his encounters with these people. And one of them is a short encounter of Rav Steinsaltz in the 60s. He was a really young thing. He was probably in his 30s. He was in his 30s. And actually, it was before he was married, so he was 25 even when he met him. So it must have been early 60s. He was born in 1934 or 36. 36 he was born. So he sits there with Rav Steinsaltz, and he was there day after day in the shtibel in Katamon. He went there to meet him. He came to his classes, and he asked him, so what is the practical takeaway from all of this? And Rav Steinsaltz himself was always inclined to turn it into something practical. So the next day he came back, Rav Steinsaltz, with this whole, you can read it there, it's a very interesting account. I actually have it scanned, I can send it to you, of what the difference between men and women is based on Kabbalah. The stuff that today's bread and butter, but I guess back in the early 60s, this was some kind of novel way of thinking. And you needed an intellect the size of his to try to take this esoteric knowledge and to bring it down. So since Rav Steinsaltz, there's been Rav Ginsburg, there's been other people who've done a much better job already of explaining what it means practically. But the problem remains that most people don't know how to take esoteric knowledge and to turn it into something practical. So you've got this problem of we have these mystical, we have more mysticism maybe than anybody else, but what do you do with it?
They're inaccessible.
It's both inaccessible. Even if it is accessible, it's impractical. There's nothing you can do with it. It doesn't help you with anything.
So this is why we lose.
Right.
Confused,
so people go to Buddhism.
Yeah.
Why? Because there, in the end, they tell you, okay, sit down and meditate.
Yeah, it's very
Here's something to do. And in Yiddishkeit, there's no connection. Most people don't see the connection. They can't even fathom there might be a connection between the many, many commandments that we have, which is the big novelty of Yiddishkeit. Commandments, actually doing something, dozens of things to do every day, hundreds of things to do every year, and between mysticism, they can't see what's the connection. So when I put tefillin on, so what is that? So if I daven, what is that? So we've got this gap, this huge gap. Why? Because the mysticism is underground, and these underground waters, and the river flowing above is seemingly not connected. You don't see the wellspring. You've never gone to the source. Because people don't go to the source, they don't see the connection at all. They don't see. And even when you go to the source, it's drop by drop.
Right.
It's very hard to get
the
a full picture of this is the whole river that you see on top. This is the river that's flowing on the ground. These are the mitzvos, but to see them coming out of this mystical knowledge is very difficult for people. So you've got this tremendous gap between the two. So really, the river's above, the water is flowing above, it says the verse, they can't satisfy you. Na'arot rabim, ma'im rabim lo yachlu l'chabot ha'ava, v'na'arot rabim lo yishtafuha. So much water can't extinguish the love, and many rivers can't satiate it. Can't bring it to satisfaction. And here it's talking about the revealed, says the Alter Rebbe. So you got this problem. So what do we do? כי אם היות שזהו גילוי מדרגות עליונות מאוד, עם כל זה לא ישקיט לו דבר שהנפש לא תתמלא ותתרווה צימונה על ידי גילוי זה לבד. It's not enough, because in the end the person is looking for what's underground.
So really, if you look at the sky and you can see the rain forming, you can't drink from it. And if the rain falls onto the ground, the water is dirty, you can't drink from it. The only water you can drink is the one that's either underground or pooled.
Yeah, you have to collect it.
You have to collect it. So you have to have a process by which you can tap into the water, whether by digging or by going to the river.
Okay. In the end, nobody's satisfied with what's revealed.
It's not so much satisfied, it's not accessible.
Okay. So
They can't have access to
even
it.
Technically, it's not so accessible. So you need to get to a well. You need to find a way to get down into the ground, into the concealed aspects of this water. And again, the water here is the wisdom, it's the knowledge of God.
Right.
כי שמיים וארץ, what time is it? We have a little bit left. כי שמיים וארץ הם גן עדן העליון וגן עדן התחתון, שבו מתענגים הנשמות על ידי נהר יוצא מעדן. So really, the truth is that even in the heavens and the earth, it says here, that who do I want in the heavens, and with you I don't want anything on earth. It's another verse. But
So
here,
yeah, who?
who, mili bashamayim,
Right.
who is for me in heavens, and with you I want nothing on earth.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
It's a little,
Yeah,
it's a little poetic.
makes sense.
What it's trying to say is really that both above and below I'm not satisfied. Mili bashamai means if I look up, I never fathom you from looking up. And v'imcha lo chafatzti ba'aretz, and with you I want nothing on earth. It's like saying that on earth, the deep, even if I just look at the surface of the earth, there's a feeling of dissatisfaction. Meaning you become dull. I don't want anything. It says if a person's only looking at the surface of things, they become dull. Their mind is dulled. Their intellect is dulled. Their cravings are dulled. Everything, you become a ground, like again, it's like looking at somebody who's a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very simple mind, very coarse. Even if I have you, Hashem, in some way here on earth, but it's on earth, it dulls me.
Can you just repeat the second part of that?
And with you, even when I'm with you, if all I am is on earth, I want nothing.
But I want nothing could also mean I don't need anything.
Okay, that's
right?
the problem.
No, I don't need anything because I already have everything.
That's the problem.
But why is that a problem?
Because
so if I'm certain that I have you above, right? If I'm certain that I have a relationship with you above, then right here I need nothing because I'm already certain.
That's something else. Here we're saying that mili bashamayim, who is for me in heavens, meaning when I look above, I can't fathom you.
Okay.
And when I understand you from what's going on below, I become dull.
Yeah. Okay.
Become simple-minded. Why? Because the last thing you can say about God is that He's understood, is that He's fathomable, that I already have Him under my finger. I understand it all. The moment that a person comes to that kind of statement, that I don't need anything, I have no cravings, I don't want anything, he's dead.
Yeah, he's got no.
If you ever feel, wow, I've learned all these books, I now know it all.
You're dead.
The only thing...
Check your pulse.
The only thing, yeah, you're dead. Because the whole point is to wonder. So if you're now wondering, if it hasn't given you more questions,
right.
This is also, I love this statement from Steinsaltz. He said that when he became frum, it's not that he found answers to his questions. He found better questions.
Yeah.
The questions I had until now, they weren't so good. These ones are much better. Okay. So, but now he's going to take it in a very interesting direction. He's going to say now that even in even in what we call the Garden of Eden, meaning where the soul is before a person is born, and where the soul returns. And even in the Garden of Eden down here on earth, one of the best examples is Shalashidus and Shabbos. That's Garden of Eden here on earth. There's nothing better. You don't need anything, you don't want anything. All you have is just to enjoy and take pleasure in God for an hour a week. Even there is no satisfaction. There's no real knowledge of God. Because it's not permanent. Even if you have something very high, but you can't ever fully be satiated from it, because it's passing. It's an hour every week, or in the time, or even when you're in a soul without a body. So even there, not everything can be revealed. So what are we waiting for? The main revelation of godliness will be in the future when the resurrection of the dead occurs. And then it says, then a wellspring will come out from God's house, from the temple, as it were. It's an allegory. It's a symbol. What's it trying to say?
We need revelation.
That there will be a revelation. There will be like a wellspring from the Torah itself.
Right.
And here the idea is that it comes out of the Holy of Holies, where the Ark is, with the Torah.
The giants will walk with us.
Huh?
Our Avot will walk with us.
The Avot also, but the point is that God's revelation of the inner wisdom of His Torah will be revealed.
Right.
You don't need the Avos for that. The Avos is something else. But you have this new way of seeing the Torah. The Torah text doesn't change, but the meaning changes in such a way that it's much, much deeper. It's inclusive of everything that came before, but it's so much deeper that it's almost like everything that came before is just a drop compared to what we're revealing now. It's a whole new way of looking at Torah. Obviously, in the Chassidus, the explanation is that the moment that you take the Torah and you apply it to the human psyche, to psychology, that's where this great revelation comes from.
So that is the path. That is the path of Torah.
So that's why we hold that the Baal Shem Tov is the beginning of this revelation. So again, it doesn't have to happen in Yerushalayim. It started in Mezhigush. But the moment that it started, actually it started even a little bit earlier, but the moment that it started becomes like a wellspring. And it drop by drop by drop, it adds to itself until finally it accumulates and becomes a great river. But this great river is when you take the Torah and you begin to apply it, and you ask, so what is this saying about the human psyche? Okay, so this is all just an introduction to where he's going to go with, because he hasn't mentioned really Isaac yet, right? But now he's giving us a hint. He says this all happens by studying Torah. You have to learn Torah. Who did this? Who went down to the wellspring and brought out the first drops of water?
Isaac.
No.
It wasn't Avram.
It was an Avram, that's for sure. So who was it? It was Rivka in last week's parsha.
Ah, yeah. Well, actually, the water raised for her. She didn't go down. She didn't need to go down.
But that's something that's missed. Who is the first person to draw water in the Torah? To bring water from a wellspring? Rivka.
The Baal Tshuva.
She, I don't know, maybe she's a Baal Tshuva. Okay? She certainly comes from a very bleak
surroundings.
So, she went down to the wellspring and she filled her jug with water. Why does it say kada? Kada means her jug. The jug in the Hebrew is kad. Kaf Dalet. Kaf Dalet is 24 in Gematria. So it's explained in the Zohar, Him Kaf Dalet Safrin Deoraita. These are the 24 books of the Torah. He's talking about the whole Tanakh, the whole Bible that has 24 books. And they are drawn out of the wellspring, which is called the Chakim Velo B'Chokhma Yediyah. She took 24 books out of it. She filled one jug out of it. But really, this is what will be revealed in the future. So just understand the context here. What he's saying is, Rivka, somebody mentioned something incredible this week I saw. Rivka is never again mentioned in all the 24 books. I need to check it.
Other than this pasha.
Other than in the Chumash. In Vayishlach, she's mentioned it one more time, because it says that her wet nurse passed away. Devorah, her wet nurse. But there's no mention of her. Sarah is mentioned many times in the Bible. Rivka is mentioned. Rachel is mentioned the most times in the Bible, and even Leah is mentioned more times. But Rivka is never again mentioned. This is a very interesting thing. Why is she not mentioned?
Because she's done all her work in the first instance.
She's actually the source.
She did all her work in the first instance. She did the whole work.
But don't think for a second that she's finished. Rather, what she did at that moment, that was the starting point. That was the beginning of the wellspring. It's very interesting that this wellspring is given to a woman. She's the one who draws the first waters from this wellspring. And as a result, says the Alter Rebbe, all 24 books of the Bible, all the prophecies that came after that, they're all as a result of her work as a child.
And Sarah was also the first to get the Nebuah.
No, but here we're not talking about a prophecy, but many prophets. But a prophecy that becomes part of the 24 books, it starts from Rivka. What's so special about her? Why? Okay, so we'll get into this in the continuation. But she says, but don't think that it's over. Because really, the real revelation from the same place will come in the future.
Oh.
When the wellspring opens up again from the house of Hashem, and it begins to flood the world again with this river that comes and connects everything.
So it will be Rivka again?
So
back to work?
Again. It'll also be Yitzchak, that we'll see also.
Yeah.
The Yitzchak and Rivka are the couple of the future.
Right.
And sort of like, we talked about this on Shabbos, I think you didn't hear this maybe. We talked about it a few years ago. That on Avram's coin, he had an old man and old woman representing him and Sarah on one side. And on the other side, he engraved a young man and a young woman. They were Yitzchak and Rivka.
Mm-hmm.
That was the coin he used to as a king. That was the coin that he coined. That was his thing. So he and Sarah, Avram and Sarah, they represent the past. But the future, they're always young. Yitzchak and Rivka are always young. They can't be
forever young.
They're always the picture of the future. So I think we'll end here because it's a good point.
Sure.
And then we'll continue tomorrow to explain more about Yitzchak then. We haven't touched on Yitzchak yet. What did he do?
Bezrat Hashem.
Get it?